It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 672 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. I have a fun guest lined up for you today. Joining me is Chris Hallberg. Chris is the author of The Business Sergeant's Field Manual, subtitle Military-Grade Business Execution Without the Yelling and Push-Ups. I have to admit, I love that subtitle, Without the Yelling and Push-Ups. Unfortunately, Bridget, still on the injured reserve list this week and won't be able to join us today. However, she should be back in action and joining us again next week. Now, we have a new sponsor of Accelerate today. I want to welcome the Sales House. Now, if you're a regular listener to Accelerate, you know that I believe sales training is broken. I mean, it's not doing a good enough job of educating salespeople about the human element and the human aspects of sales. How to build relationships to connect with buyers, engage their interest, build trust, and inspire them to take action. So to fill that need, I built the Sales House. It's the only all-in-one sales education community for business-to-business sellers. So I want you to come experience the hundreds of hours of educational content from me and other world-class experts and join in our live coaching hours, live workshops, and in-person meetups, all designed to accelerate your sales career and take it to the next level. So to learn more, visit thesaleshouse.com/672. That's our episode number today. So that's thesaleshouse.com/672. And if you go there, you'll be able to take advantage of our special $1 trial offer for listeners of Accelerate. I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, next up, my conversation with my guest, Chris Hallberg. Chris works with a lot of entrepreneurs and small enterprises to drive revenue growth, and some key points we're going to cover today. First, why you need to have a blend of sales activities. I mean, there's no magic bullet sales channel. Second, why you shouldn't tinker too much with your sales process. It's a really interesting perspective he has, especially for smaller enterprises. If your sales are within an acceptable range, then find another part of your business to fix. And lastly, why it's important to have a written, consistent, repeatable sales process. We're going to talk about why so few companies actually have this documented and why it's hard to hold your people accountable if you don't. All right, so here we go. Chris Hallberg, welcome to the show.
Andy, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure. Great to have you here. So, as I mentioned in my introduction, Chris is the author of the book titled The Business Sergeant's Field Manual, Military-Grade Business Execution Without the Yelling and Push-Ups, which I thought was great. Do they still, in the military, there's still a lot of yelling and push-ups going on, or is that sort of like our retrograde view of the way it is?
No, there's still lots of yelling, lots of push-ups. A lot of other things have changed, but those things remain.
Okay. Well, that's probably a reason for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, the yelling represents a stressful situation and how to respond to. Usually there's 3 or 4 drill sergeants yelling at the same time.
Right.
And then the push-ups are a great way to correct behaviors that they don't like and strengthen the body, which is important for any soldier to have good strength to be able to carry the load.
Well, yeah. So maybe we should bring yelling back into business. I mean, it seems to have gone. I'm saying this facetiously. I mean, I've worked for yellers in the past.
Yeah,
and it was. I was always slightly bemused by them.
Well, I think it loses the effect after a while. If you're always yelling, what are people supposed to stop and take note of? Whispering? I mean, how does that work? So I think a little emotion in business is okay. It's okay to be passionate. It's okay to be pissed, but I always look for the motives behind those reactions and call those out and say, hey, is that coming from a healthy place? Well, are you just upset, or are you generally upset that we're not executing because you care so much, or are you just upset?
Or are you just upset we're not paying attention to you or something?
There you go. Yeah, are you throwing a fit, or is this a good place for what I call business theater? And there's an opportunity to have some emotion come into the room. But to your point, if you work for a yeller, everyone just kind of rolls their eyes, and it literally has no effect. And it is kind of amusing for everyone around you.
Yeah. Well, I always thought it was amusing. I was on this company. I'd been acquired by another company, and the president of the acquiring company was a yeller. And so I was in California. They were on the East Coast. I was supposed to every month go back to the East Coast for executive management meetings. And I just got in the habit of scheduling my trips out of the country during that time.
That's how you worked around it.
Yeah. Well, eventually they caught on.
Yeah.
They said, if you want to be a part of the team, then you're going to start coming. It's like, all right, I'm out of here. All right. So I want to talk about several things in your book because there are some things, and you talk about things more than just about sales, but we're going to focus more on the sales aspect of things because of the audience, but some entrepreneurial. So you wrote something that I think is really overlooked by a lot of entrepreneurs is that they don't do a very good job of managing sales. And you would think, gosh, you start a business because you're passionate about something or a product, and oftentimes you do find sort of the founder entrepreneur is oftentimes the best advocate. But I've found in my work, and I'm sure you've seen this in yours as well, is almost as many times as you get that founder that's just like, I don't want anything to do with sales, right? And I sort of see this. I see this oftentimes, I think, sort of reflected in when you look at sort of the online marketing followings that people get and everything that sort of says, hey, here's an easy way to generate business that doesn't involve actually talking to a customer, right? I mean, you look at, I love the content of Social Media Examiner, Michael Stelzner. They do a great job. Hundreds of thousands of members. There's nobody in sales that has anything near that following. And I think it's people say, well, that's easier, right? If I can just invest money there and I don't have to go talk to somebody. And so it sort of plays that when they hire sales managers, it's like, yeah, just go do that. And, I'll leave you alone. And that leads to problems.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of shifts in selling, marketing. I would say, two areas of business that have changed more in the last 5 or 6 years than really anything else is how to acquire leads, how to capture them, and then how to convert them. And, the days of smiling and dialing, 200 coldies a day and, grinding it out. I mean, you can still do that, but the effectiveness of that is a fraction of what it was, even 10 years ago. But as we evolve as business people, so do our sales funnels, channels, marketing. Inbound marketing is great, but it's kind of managing the sales process by exception is really what it is. So, when somebody raises their hand and said, "Hey, I love your blog. I heard you on a podcast. I want to work with you," they're ready to buy. There's really no selling. You're really inside sales at that point, and that's really lazy for salespeople just to catch hot opportunities, and there's not a lot of skill to convert those. But
I think there can be. It depends on the product you're selling. But yes, I agree. Okay, if it's a little more transactional, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So, but my experience, being a leadership coach, and I've really gotten quite lazy. But at the end of the day, coaching clients and looking at their common issues that they're facing in the marketplace, this quarter, last quarter, recent examples, and we talk through these things. And the reality is, you still have to make the phone ring. That's the marketer's job, and the salesperson's job is to take that inquiry and convert it to a paying client. So the game, high level, hasn't changed. Just how it works. There are different ways to do it. So you have to have a funnel that has multiple sales activities. You can't just rely on inbound. You have to put some, shoes on the street still, but you use each kind to kind of support each other.
Yeah, nor can you rely purely on outbound either.
Right.
I know companies that do, but it really is a mix that works the best. And as I say, to me, it's utopia if you're in sales and you get enough high quality targeted leads that you don't have to prospect. That'd be great, but utopia has never arrived as far as I know. And even companies like HubSpot and others that built on inbound marketing, when they're doing their enterprise sales, they're doing a mix of activities. They're doing proactive and inbound. So I think it's really the right mix for companies. But getting back to the point we were making earlier is that the entrepreneur, the CEO, the owner has to be comfortable in being engaged at the right level with the right balance in that whole activity. And I think this is, as we look at sort of failure points that I see with entrepreneurial small, mid-sized enterprises as they're trying to scale, a lot of times the limitation is that the CEO, on the other hand, is too involved in sales. And I remember one client going in, this is not a sole example, but just purpose of illustration is, I calculated. I was doing a review of his sales activities. It was one of the first things I did, and he was involved in nearly 2/3 of every deal. I mean, he wasn't the account person, but he had significant involvement in almost 2/3 of every order that was signed. And And it wasn't until he realized that, and I made him step back, that the company started growing again.
Yeah, I mean, there's an old saying: the bottleneck is always at the top of the bottle. That's a great example right there.
Oh, that's a great saying. Well, I'd never heard that. That's a good one.
Yeah,
but that is an example, and so that was sort of the counterexample to the one where another client, as an example, is went in and CEO just didn't want anything to do with sales, right? I mean, hired VP of sales to run it, and also to a point you made in the book about keeping people on well past their expiration dates is, the sales VP sort of did that. And entrepreneur thought, yeah, I've got complete trust in this person, but it wasn't really happening. And since CEO wasn't involved, the VP of sales wasn't making it happen, and everybody got sort of comfortable, as happens all the time, and they just sort of muddled along.
Yeah, and then again, those sales tactics or techniques that used to be effective are no longer effective, and there's new techniques, again, with that blend of sales activities. I find that if there's an old guard sales VP and they're resistant to change or the evolution that we're facing in sales and marketing today, then, their expertise is no longer expert. And usually it takes a year or two for everyone to figure that out. And at that point, there's a huge trough in their funnel and they're back in the third world, with a pipeline that wasn't what they're used to, wasn't what their, burn rate or their spend is. And then the phone rings, like I get that call once in a while, like, hey, we used to be really good at sales and marketing, and all of a sudden things have dried up and we don't know why. And then you go in and ask a few questions, and that's exactly why, is that they just haven't migrated or evolved, and the market has kind of left them behind.
Yeah, well, that speaks to a point that you had in the book that I was going to ask you about, because, I sort of disagreed with it, so I helped bring it up, which was, you're saying basically, hey, once you've got your sales process or figured out and so on, is, don't get too fussy with it, don't overly tweak it and so on, because, hey, it works, and there are other things you could spend your time and effort on. And to the point we were just making, though, before is the way the pace of change is so rapid that I find that if a sales organization isn't going through this process maybe twice a year, at least once a year, if not twice, I recommend twice, of sort of saying, let's assume we have hit a little bit of a trough. What would we do then? And go through this exercise of sort of looking at everything from scratch again. And I have a process. I give people a little blueprint that over a course of 5 days, just make sure you're on track again, right? Make sure that you talk to your customers, do the lost business review, you reassess all your salespeople, look at your processes, and then put your 90-day plan together, as you talked about. And I think do that proactively twice a year, you're going to miss some of the downturns, actually, which I think is really positive.
Right. Yeah. And just for clarity on that, my thoughts in the book were, if it's at an acceptable level, meaning you're happy with it, your sales funnel is in parity with your ability to execute onboarding those clients and satisfying those clients. If it's in a range that's acceptable, my comment was, don't muddle with it. If it's okay, find another part of your business, because the business is a holistic body. The sales is the oxygen or the blood, or whatever analogy you want to go here. But there are other parts of the body, they need constant maintenance. And if you look at a business, just like your body, it's the total body. One part of it's not working and your overall health isn't well. So I wasn't saying, don't mix it up. Don't stay with the new stuff. But I find that people over tinker and they A/B test so many different things. They're in a constant state of test, and they're not able to actually find something and really extract the maximum value from what they created because of that constant flux. So that's what I was trying to communicate.
Well, I agree with that part. I think that you do your quarterly business reviews, but you set aside, let's say, at least once a year, you're going to do this deep dive, whether you think you need it or not. Because if you don't do it, I guarantee you will need it within about another quarter or two. And this is the pattern I see with companies, is those that don't do it proactively, they get complacent.
Yeah, I mean, a great sales leader is going to have something in spec means I don't need to completely change this machine, but as I spot patterns and trends within the quarters and start to see things that used to work not work, now it's out of spec, and now it's time to go to school and try some different things as needed, as prescribed, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I said what I'd prescribe is this 5-day blueprint. First day you spend 2 hours calling existing customers, because people lose touch really quickly with why people are buying their products and services. And
they don't ask, they don't know. A lot of times they don't want to know. They just.
So at the most senior level, the sales VP, or if it's the entrepreneur who's running sales, you're going to spend, part of a day making 8 calls to customers. And then the next day, you're going to talk to about the same number of those deals, either customers you lost or deals you lost. Because then you start understanding. Because otherwise, everything's being filtered through the salespeople or through the CRM system, which is problematic and best, right? Yeah. And then the third day, you assess your people again. Fourth day, you look at your process and look at all your metrics and say, okay, do we have the right vital factors we're measuring or not? And then fifth day, take all the input and say, okay, how do that change our plan over the next 90 days?
Yeah, I could see going through that process annually, if not biannually, to your point.
Yeah.
For the sales leader.
Yes.
And that's how they would keep their numbers within spec right there.
Exactly.
So I think we're in violent agreement on this one.
Yeah, I know. I phrased it that way for entertainment value. So
good.
So we got one other point we'll talk about though too that a little bit later. But you had there are two things I think, another cautionary tales for sales leaders or founders, entrepreneurs. Really sort of three. I mean, you talk about never hire your best salesperson as your sales manager, which hopefully people understand that message by now. But the other one that you talked about, which was to me really resonated, and because I talk about this all the time, is that you said probably 60% of the companies you work with don't have a documented or consistent or repeatable sales process. And to me, that means they haven't documented it. About 5-6 years ago, I surveyed a number of companies, about 350 companies, small businesses. And the number was 72% did not have a documented sales process. In fact, one of the options I gave them was we just make it up as we go along, and 45% said we just make it up as they go along. That's a problem, and I think companies don't really understand that. So talk about how you work with companies to help them define that consistent, repeatable process.
Yeah, so I'll start asking a lot of questions to the sales leader. I work with the CEO and their leadership team, so head of sales, head of marketing, head of ops, head of finance, senior leadership, and I'll ask, how do you get your leads? How do you convert them? And after a bunch of questions, different data points throughout several days together. Basically, so you're just making it up. You're getting lucky. Help me understand this.
Nothing wrong with luck, but luck's not a repeatable process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And when when we look into it, and it's like, well, it's just kind of worked that way. It's not working that way as much as it used to, but we got good people. I think we're going to be okay. So there's a lot of hope. There's a lot of wishing. And when you really discover that there is no repeatable sales process, and again, in a fast moving market where things move quickly, that's a problem. So just identifying that, we're a little weak on process. We've got a couple of great salespeople. We'll just copy what they're doing. And a lot of times that's the attitude. And normal salespeople can't necessarily emulate, very top talented 5-10% salespeople. So there's a lot of assumptions that happen in sales management. And a company, so I always ask, how are you going to scale that? Great. I get that works at 20 million, but I'm here to help you get to 50 million. So explain how your philosophy scales to 50 million, and then I'll just be quiet and smile. And it's usually a pretty short conversation with, okay, great. Let's start on documenting our sales process. Let's back what you said just a few minutes ago, Andy, let's talk to the deals we didn't get. Let's talk to the deals that are leaving us. Let's talk to the deals we did get. Let's take all of that information from our ecosystem, if you will, and listen for some commonality. And if the deals we're not getting are all saying the same 2 or 3 things, we should probably address that right now in our sales presentation. And I'll even say, great, that was a previously a weakness. Let's double down on this and not just get you up to spec.
Right.
Let's find a way to message that inflection point that seems to be hot and sticky for those people, and let's make it a plus for you. Let's make that thing that used to be weak now a strength, and then you can use that against your competitors,
right.
and Jedi mind trick them into no, I'm now over there, and that's what ends up happening, and that's what ends up being effective a lot of the times.
Yeah, well, I think one of the primary reasons that you see in smaller companies that they don't document the sales process is, it's this inflection point, as you said, sometimes as a matter of function of growth, is when you document it, you are suddenly holding people accountable for it. And everybody sort of likes that early stage of a smaller company where everybody's contributing and we're growing and everybody's sort of doing their own thing, but only takes you to a certain point. And then you have to start having some process. But if you have process, then people have to be held accountable for what they're doing. And that starts with the sales manager. It goes to the salespeople themselves. So you get this passive resistance pushback against that. And you have to get past that as an entrepreneur and really insist on, especially if you're not as involved, is really insist on this documentation, definition of your processes, and definition of metrics or key performance indicators against it, because you're not going to be able to grow without that.
Yeah, and I think the key word there is having process is one thing. Holding people accountable, that's a totally separate issue. And I see, of those 72% that don't have a sales process, I'd wonder about the minority percent that does. How well is that really enforced? So I find that a very small percentage of businesses have a process and truly hold each other accountable to it. So that's that sales management function where it's completely different than selling. Sales management, and this is what vexes a lot of people, and they don't get it. And that's again why they promote their highest producing rep or the marketing person. Well, why don't you, or this, a lot of times I see, oh, you're the sales VP. Well, you're the sales and marketing VP. Well, that particular executive doesn't really know anything about marketing. So then they're having to manage people in marketing they don't really understand. Or vice versa. You have a marketing person in charge of the conversions and they know how to make the phone ring, but not how to get new clients. So it comes down to that management function of separating kind of church and state, having process for both sales and both marketing, but not conflating the two because they're very, very different and have different objectives. Right. And then having different, processes and KPIs, scorecard measurables, whatever you want to call them. And a lot of the work that I do in my coaching is I, install EOS, or the entrepreneurial operating system. That's that operating system that allows you to put your arms around your whole business. And inside of that system, my good friend and mentor, the author of Traction and the creator of EOS, Gino Wickman, his philosophy is, hey, let's just measure forget about the results. If you're just looking at the results, it's already too late. It's like getting a stock tip. The move already happened. You're dead money on that. Well, instead, what are the human activities that generate the business result? Exactly. How many calls, how many emails, how many face-to-face meetings, how many people, we have this technology. You can see who's opening your emails. You can see how many pages they looked at. If somebody opens up 12 pages, of your sales material, you should call them. They want to be called. No one spends 12 pages on anything unless there's a high level of interest. So there's a great example of the flag just came over on your CRM. Somebody's heavily immersed in what you're selling. You should find a way to contact them literally right as they're doing that, have a conversation, move for a next step, versus letting that one opportunity pass and hoping they email you or hit the contact us button, which is a much smaller percentage.
Yeah, and for most small companies, it's even more fundamental than seeing if it's going to hit, get a lead score pop up in your CRM system, because quite frankly, most small businesses aren't operating at that level, but have some sort of level of
But they could, and
it could be something
operate with a much smaller team.
Sure, but it could be something as simple as technology standpoint from an email tracking program, right? You could use Yesware or one of those applications. Start there. Make sure you're using something, right? I think too often, companies are taking that step. Oh, we need a CRM system. They jump into a CRM system and have a pretty bad implementation of it, where what they really want to do is sort of track email opens. You can get notified every time somebody opens that email, or every time they look at the attachment, or which page they're looking at. Just start with something simple first and make that work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. You don't have to spend $5,000 a month on a killer CRM that tells you everything, especially stuff you don't even need to know. What you need are tools to leverage kind of what you do need when you need them. And the neat thing about our current and operating environment in 2018 is there's an app for everything, and a lot of them are $10 a month and will do what you need them to do.
Well, there's a danger in that though too. I mean, you do have to make sure you don't have too many of the apps, because right now they
have to work together. Yes.
Well, and I work together, but there has to be a purpose. And finding now there's one survey I saw of reps and inside sales organizations in the tech space. I think it's like they're averaging 11 apps they were using, but the thing was, the management team thought they were only using 5. So there was this huge disconnect there. But some are fundamental, and small businesses. I've talked about this in the program before. Is start with something. Start small. Start modest. Find a tool. So I think the first place everybody should start is an email tracking program. It's so simple. Your sales reps are going to use it. You can use templatized emails. You can use it for your proactive outbound, and then you can see how people are engaging with your content. These are $5, $10 a month per seat. I mean, virtually nothing. And I would have killed for that intelligence when I was carrying a bag. I mean, years and years ago, even before email. I can't see how you do without it. I mean, I still use them today. I mean, it's simple. If you're a salesperson, until you've called somebody while they're looking at your email, you just don't understand how it works. It's like they're like, "Wow, I was just literally looking at your email." Oh, really?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, really? The other thing that you didn't address specifically, and not critiquing it, but I'm sure you've seen it, because I wanted to bring it up, because to me, this is, in smaller companies, is one of the biggest impediments to growth is there's a heavy concentration of accounts in the hands of like the first 1 or 2 salespeople into the company. And I've come into situations where there's, one person had over 50% of the accounts. And 2 things happening there. One is you're starving all the other people you've hired of opportunities to really succeed. 3 things happening. 2 is you're not really servicing those accounts efficiently anyway.
Right.
And you've taken the person who at the time that you hired him up front was your most effective new account person, new business person, and turned him into an account manager. So you've taken him out of the field, effectively taken him out of the field, him or her out of the field. So I have seen that many, many times with clients. One of the first things I just sort of thought was sort of triggered, because I saw a couple listservs that I track in sales. This week I saw people sort of raising the issue, how do you reallocate accounts and so on. I just wonder if you had any experiences in that.
Yeah, so I think you nailed it. So my military training said that you can only directly supervise so many people well. So the Army, has this long-standing rule of maximum of 7 direct reports. So if you're a 4-star general, you might have 3 3-star generals, and that kind of happens all the way down to millions of service members. So if that's once unicorn level business development person, a really good hunter, and then you say, okay, here's a shovel and some overalls, you're now a farmer. First off, is that really how they're wired? Do they long for the days of the hunt, and now they're saddled with a very
I don't think so. What happens is they don't get saddled. You don't give them that instruction. What I see in companies, it just evolves that way, right?
No,
because they don't want to give it up, because the money's pretty easy at that point.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And you had somebody that had the skill to acquire new clients. And this is the whole hunter versus farmer thing. This has been going on for forever in sales, and the reality is, account management is not only retention and growth, land and expand those clients. Right? There is a sales function of great account management. When you're crushing it on site, they want to buy more from you. You can find opportunities where they need more of your help, because once you're doing great work, they're very open. It costs almost nothing to sell to an existing client compared to acquiring a new one. So if in that situation, what I'd recommend, and this advice isn't always well received, is, hey, that person doesn't need 74 accounts. Let them pick the 25 best accounts they want, all ones that they've won, long-term relationships. but let's free up some time for them to get some referrals outside of those industries and go out and have a healthy blend of acquiring new clients at a higher commission rate, and then you still have this comfortable farm, this field that grows kind of on its own with just regular rain and sunlight. It doesn't require a ton, but then you have the time to go find new clients and expand the ones you have versus just having too many and just being responsive or reactive. So what growth are you really having if you're just responding to opportunities as they happen versus having the time to go in and really look under some rocks, turn on the lights in some dark areas? I find that's usually where the best expansion is in clients is the second or third layer of the onion is where it gets good. But again, you have to execute for the first couple of layers to even be there. So yeah, that's an argument that does come up, and it really comes down to is, hey, what if that individual decided to leave and take 40-50% of those accounts with them and start their own firm, or to join your biggest competitor, or it's just like putting that's what 10% of your revenue with one customer, the tail starts to wag the dog. So you need to defray that risk and that level of performance across a larger cross section of salespeople, and that's a lot safer and less whiplash from one end to the other.
Well, I mean, if you're a small business CEO or owner and you have that situation, you've got one sales rep that's sort of the big dog that has preponderance of the accounts, and you're not acting because they have somewhat subtly or not subtly threatened they're going to take the accounts. Just let them go. People may buy from people, but ultimately they're buying from companies, right? I mean, they may like that sales rep, but they bought your product and service because it helped them achieve their objectives, their goals. I've never seen an instance where any company has lost any substantial amount of business from a top rep leaving and going to another company, even in the same industry. I mean, customers don't look at them the same when they come wearing a different badge. It's like, oh, you're with them now? Yeah, the relationship isn't the same. As much as people want to say this whole idea in the past about hiring a Rolodex, I never did that. I mean, so yeah, if you're in that situation, you got to rep all these accounts. If they're not going to play ball, say goodbye. It's not going to hurt. It may hurt for a little bit, but it'll be much better soon.
Yeah, it's generally going to hurt a lot less than you think. And I would take that same statement and put it across the entire company, that I find that we have this person, they're okay, they're not horrible. They do provide some value. We understand it's not as good as the others, but we'll keep them around because that's somewhat profitable or it's acceptable, versus the mindset again of spreading that around, having a strong organization. So if somebody does leave, it would just be a blip, an anomaly. Not a 87% of my accounts are with this one rep, and if they go, I could lose 15-20%. For a small business, you would definitely see that. And I have seen situations where the sales unicorn, someone that has been protected and coddled and spoon-fed, does leave, and that does change the business, and there are layoffs. And I've seen it happen. It's rare. You're right about that, but I've been through that with clients, and it's brutal. So just like I would coach a client not to have any customers that make up more than 10% of their revenue, I would also push to make sure that you're not overly dependent on any one particular sales rep. Because to your point, it's what the company is, what we sold you into. We still have to do that. And if we do that well and we provide value to that customer, anyone can leave. They want what you're doing for them, to your point.
Absolutely.
And I agree. But it's always a good idea to not get overly dependent on any one customer or salesperson.
Sure.
Because
what happens with the salespeople, because they're the only salesperson, and the company grows around them. And so they say, well, I'm going to naturally hold on to all these accounts that I had, and everybody else grows. And then, these people aren't getting a fair shake at some good accounts, right? And you say, some people say, oh, they should be able to go out and develop good accounts. Well, true, but you need to be equitable. And if you're listening to this and you're a sales leader in a smaller business and you think, here's my acid test. If you get a lead, you consider a really good lead. If you don't have a round robin system where you're equitably distributing leads and you steer the lead to one person, you got a problem.
Yeah, you're only as strong as your weakest link, and it sounds like you've got one strong link and a bunch of weak links. So net effect. I mean, so let's go back to greater good, right? A sales leader is here to provide, sales value to the greater good, not to serve individuals. Nor should individuals on teams have it be about me. So it's we over me. And the other thing I would say is like, hey, this is a great lead. I really want this, but I can't give it to you because you're not very good. I have to give it to this person. Well, that's just a training and failure or hiring by the sales leader.
Exactly.
If you can't spit your leads out to all of your salespeople who are considered active or ready to receive leads, then that's really the issue. Not the I know this person can close at 5% higher, so any large account, I'll do that. So the best salespeople get the best leads. That's been going on since the beginning of time. The first rock or club that was sold in caveman times, right? They gave the best club to the best whoever could swing it the best. So a lot of that basic human activities, behavior is going to happen. But to your point, there's another issue there, right? It's interesting. When you talk about some of these behaviors and what you think is going on is not really what's going on. What's going on is there's a failure in process or equitable distribution of leads or training or, just pure out sales competency. And we end up not fixing the weakness. We end up just giving the lead to the strong salesperson because we have numbers to hit.
Exactly.
And then something else happens. And then we're unnecessarily weakened, and then things go down this way. And I see that happen quite a bit because, I get the call. I help businesses execute, just plain out execution. But if you have a marketing problem, a funnel problem, a sales conversion problem, we're now in the third world because the revenue is stopped. We have all these employees. Everyone is panicking because their cash is burning. And it's really hard to help a company with limited resources. And, we have to start over and retool their entire sales organization.
Yeah,
as
true.
you know, Andy, that doesn't happen in an afternoon or a quarter. That is something, if you find yourself on the wrong side of it, it is going to be a longer than you think slog to get back to zero. And, I get a lot of those calls, and I have to bring in somebody like yourself, that could come in and work in parallel while I help get the right people in the right seats and get everyone to recommit to the new vision. And usually, it takes 6 months, 9 months, a year in every one of those instances to get their pipeline back and get converting.
Yeah, it can certainly take a year.
That's a year of pain for everyone else in the organization. That's the price for getting a little complacent for a little bit with those exact circumstances that you listed.
Yeah, and that's why that blueprint I talked about can help people overcome that and avoid that, because you'll start surfacing these issues and you just have to address them, right? It's I'm sure you deal with this all the time in your businesses. People shy away from the tough discussions, the tough decisions, because things are going okay. But, if you really want them to go well and achieve the things you want to achieve, then those tough discussions have to take place.
Yeah, and that's my job, is to basically force those tough discussions, because no one wants to have them. But as soon as I sniff anything that could be problematic, that's my job, is to raise it up and basically put it up there, tee it up for someone to hit it, and then that usually just gets the conversation started. And once it's started, then it goes to usually a pretty healthy place.
Sure.
But it's just like the first step of getting in shape is showing up to the gym. Once you're there, the workout's kind of easy, but leaving your comfortable couch to the car, to the gym is usually where it doesn't happen. Just like dealing with difficult issues, it's someone has to have the intestinal fortitude to stick their neck out there. And a lot of times, if you don't have strong levels of team health, and it's okay to say, I don't know, instead I have to pretend like I got this, even though I know I don't have this. That's a problem as well. So I think teams that are able to discuss things and be critical of their operations, even when things are going well. That way, when things aren't going well, it won't be such an affront to have these uncomfortable conversations.
Exactly.
So I think having uncomfortable conversations, those are the best meetings possible. If you're not a little squirmy in this one, we didn't do it right. That's my fault.
We didn't dig deep enough, right?
Yeah, absolutely. If this is just an every easy breezy day in the park, why am I here? I'm here to really get to the root of this, and that might involve you being really uncomfortable for the next 10 minutes. Sorry, but again, greater good. Let's solve the problem so we can all win the game.
All right. Well, perfect. Well, Chris, unfortunately, we've run out of time. So thank you for coming, and tell folks how they can connect with you.
Yeah, my website is www.bizsgt.com. And if people want to learn more about EOS or this operating system, that website is tractioninc.com.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Gino Wickman, and a couple books he's written, or more than a couple. He's written a whole series of books.
He's got 5 now. And his website, if you want to get directly with Gino, is www.eosworldwide.com. Traction Inc. is my independently owned and operated EOS implementation firm, and I have some other implementers that work with me. And part of our process is identifying sales weakness, but we don't coach that. We call people like Andy Paul in
thank you.
and help out with that.
All right. Well, good. Well, Chris, have a great weekend.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Friends, that was Accelerate for the week. First of all, I want to thank you for joining me. And I want to thank my guest, Chris Hallberg. Join me again next week as I'm joined by Vince Bies. Vince is CEO of Sales at Scale. And we're going to have a really interesting talk about deal prediction. Vince has developed a methodology to predict whether any particular deal is going to close just by asking 5 questions. And it's not the probabilities predicting, just that binary answer, is this deal going to close or not? So make sure you come back and check that out. As I mentioned earlier in the program, don't forget to visit the Sales House. Look for our special $1 trial offer. You'll find that again at thesaleshouse.com/672. That's today's episode, 672. Thanks also again to our sponsor, Discover.org, for their ongoing support of Accelerate. And thank you again for joining me. Until next week, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.